but acknowledging that those things no longer need to have power over the people that we are today. Now, I realize that I'm a person who generally sees the cup half full rather than half empty. And that often I'm a very optimistic person. And I know that in my work with many, many folks, it's sometimes difficult to get to that place where we see things half full rather than half empty. But the thing that I've figured out in my own life is that if I begin to go down the road of always seeing things half empty, then I never get to the place of full potential. That I never get to that place of knowing that I'm worthy enough, that I am God made in God's likeness enough, that the gift of forgiveness is given completely enough, that I can reconcile the past. And I know that all of us have something in the past that we're holding on to. Sometimes I think that we're holding on to them because they are the security blankets that define who we are.
Come on.
Instead of realizing that in every new moment we are a new creation, we allow ourselves to be stuck with those things, holding on to those things, almost cradling those things, because we fear if we truly let go of those things, then we have to redefine who we are.
All right.
And that's difficult for many of us because many of us don't like change,
Right.
and many of us don't like to have to redefine who we are.
Right.
Because so many of us have been defined by our past and not by our present. Jesus found that, you know, friends. Over and over again, Jesus found that people who wanted a new start but didn't know how to do it were defined by their past. Look at the way that Jesus meets those people on the journey of his own life. The man who's paralyzed from birth and says to the man, take up your mat and walk. And the man is, I'm sure that the mat was his security blanket. That was what defined him. In fact, in his culture, to be differently abled meant that he could beg on the side of the road. And if he truly got up and walked, he would no longer be able to beg in his society, and he would have to find a way of making a new life and a new opportunity. Some of us are like those folks that are on the bed. We hear the words of Jesus, get up and walk. But how many of us really want to get up and walk? Most of us want to stay there because it's comfortable. It's familiar. Familiarity breeds contempt. But so many of us like to get stuck there. And even when we come to church on Sundays and we kind of get ourselves and we revive ourselves and we renew ourselves, and then within an hour of leaving the place, we've one more time got back to that place of our security blanket, rather than making a conscious decision to say, I no longer need that blanket anymore. But in order for me to let it be, I need to put in the hard work of living in the moment of my life. Instead of allowing the past to define us, we need to allow the very present moment to define us. And if that is true, what I look out on this morning is a group of glorious, wonderful, handsome, pretty, gorgeous folk who have shown up to be forgiven, who have shown up because it is never too late for a fresh start. It's never too late for us to begin again. It's never too late for us to be forgiven. It's never too late for us to feel worthy. Oh, in our community where so many of us have a low self-esteem, that's good news. That it's never too late for us to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, to find our wholeness, to be recreated, and to join with one another in creating this world anew and making this world a better place. I don't think that we can really join in the co-creating work of God unless we find our new creation. That it's really difficult for us to really engage in being all that we are if in being all that we are we're holding on to something from the past. We're holding on to the hurt and to the damage of the past. Now, I don't want to negate how real that is. There are stories upon story upon story of folks in this congregation who have told me how painful that past is. Much of my life, I know I've been taught that you're not worthy. You're not good enough. You're not thin enough. You haven't got enough hair. All of those things. Right. It takes courage to stand in front of the mirror naked and to say you're a beautiful creation of God.
All right.
When the reality is that the only image of God that we get to see are those who have got a six-pack and a big pecs, or beautiful in some other... I look over to my mentor and she tells me, stop. It took me a while to celebrate the fact that I am muscular but relaxed. My six-pack is a keg. And learning to enjoy it and to allow it to be. Thank you, Jesus. It's never too late for a fresh start. It's never too late for a fresh start. This week I had to have some things moved from my house. I had some stuff that was causing, clutter. And decided to, in this economic time, to find someone who would be able to take my junk away and may find some benefit from it. And so I posted on Craigslist under gigs, labor needed. And within 30 minutes, I received maybe 5 or 6 emails from folks who I asked if they had muscle and a truck. And I had 5 or 6 responses. And one of these responses is the one that I followed up on, and I called the man, Jonathan, and he said, how much do you have to take? And I said, well, it's probably a truckload. And so he said, well, I've got a truck, and so I'll be with you in an hour. And so he was there within an hour. I love that when people keep their time. And he was there within an hour, and together we took this stuff and we loaded it on the back of his truck. And at the end of the loading onto the back of his truck, I wish that he'd done this at the beginning, but he did this at the end. He said to me, so what do you do when you're not putting trash on the back of a truck? And I said, I'm a pastor. Sometimes, Reverend Pat and I have talked about this, sometimes, you wish that you could say you're a social worker. Especially on your day off. But he said to me, so what do you think of the 10 Commandments? I was like, oh no. I think they're good. But I think Jesus gave us 2 new commandments in the New Testament to learn to love God. Well, just like every typical evangelical, they never wait for the answer. And I don't mean that to be rude, but I have found that in my dialogue with evangelical fundamentalists that they never really want to hear your answer. They just want to tell you what the truth is. And so he cut me off midstream. And he said, so what do you think of the 9th commandment? I said, I think it's good. He said, thou shalt not lie. I said, tell me, brother, have you lied? Of course I've lied. I mean, if I take my childhood up to where I am today, of course I've lied. I wanted to say, but I believe in God's grace that forgives me, but he cut me off. He said, so what about the 3rd commandment? He said, thou shalt not steal. I said, I think it's a good commandment. Have you stolen, brother? Yes. I remember when I was a kid, I shoplifted.